Good morning and welcome along to a very special OTB AM. We all hope you're having a very, very good Christmas. Just a couple of more days left until the new year. We're back live on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter next Tuesday morning. That's the 2nd of January. We're going to be reviewing a big weekend of sport coming up. But right now, this morning, we've got a very special piece of content that myself and Dave McIntyre recorded just a short couple of weeks ago when Bellator was happening here in Dublin. You'll have seen Gareth Davies in studio with us on the Friday morning before that event. But he also brought with him a very special guest, UFC legend Royce Gracie. He's a Hall of Famer. He won the first 3 UFC events. Myself and Dave and Gareth Davies sat down with Mr. Gracie.
I wouldn't have a huge amount of history, Royce, in MMA, apart from the Conor McGregor era that we currently are enjoying, and Ronda Rousey and kind of the UFC, the way it's exploded in the last few years. But reading your story, it's quite incredible, particularly so as I'm getting a little older myself. I mean, you're fighting on a Bellator card at the age of 49. You certainly don't look 50. You're clearly looking after yourself extremely well.
It's a good diet. Let's say, don't drink, don't smoke. Yep.
And good genes, I'd say, as well. There's plenty
good genes, yes.
If you can just take us back to when you first started out in the UFC 1, which you won, and were a star really for the first 4 or 5 stages of UFC, it's fair to say that it's just, as a sport, a completely different viewing experience now. It did seem that almost anything went back then. There were no rounds, there were no time limits. In fact, one of your big fights went beyond the pay-per-view time limit, and a lot of the people who were watching needed their money back because they actually missed the end. It just seems like a completely different world.
On the beginning, when my father started, my father, my uncles, my cousins, before the UFC, before we brought to America, it was more of a quest that my family had to find out which style of martial arts is the best. A lot of people thought the Gracies are arrogant. They're challenging people. No, we're just trying to find out, because other people says their style is the best. We say ours the best. There's only one way to find out. Let's take all the rules, time limit, weight division, jump in a cage, no gloves, in a ring, cage back then, and just fight until somebody quit. So it was more of a quest that my family had. And then my brother brought the concept to America and create the UFC. And it was on the beginning, the first one was an 8-man tournament. So I fought on that, so the 3 fights in one night. The second UFC was 4 fights in one night. It was a 16-man tournament with no gloves, no time limit, no weight division, no rules. The only thing that you couldn't do, it was biting and eye gouging. Everything else, kick on the groin, all good. Go for it.
But I understand you were bit early on in UFC.
On the first UFC, yes.
Who did it? Are you allowed to tell us who bit you?
Geraldo Gordon. As soon as I took him down, he took a bite of my ear, pull off his mouth, and I look at him and I whisper in his ear, "You cheating, you bite me." And he just looked at me like, "So what?" Like, that's when I hold the choke a little longer.
Oh, that was in the final, right?
That was in the final, yes.
So you're pretending not to see the referee when he's tapping out. You're like, "Oh, he's not tapping out, it's okay, I'm still going to choke him for a little bit longer."
I didn't feel him tap. That's what happens when you bite. There's only 2 things they're not allowed to do: biting and eye gouging. The guy had to do one of those.
Because I think he's involved in one of the most iconic moments in the early UFC, because is he up against a sumo wrestler in the first round, and he kicks him, and the sumo wrestler's teeth are flying out of the cage, and people are like, "What the hell is this thing that we're all watching on TV?" I think that best represents the early UFC, doesn't it?
Shock everybody, yes. Yeah. People wasn't expecting, didn't know what to expect. So that was a shocking moment. Wow, this is for real.
So you obviously come from a legendary family, but also your brothers are legends in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. How is it that you become the Gracie that is selected to represent Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? The face.
Looks,
the most handsome man.
No. Your modesty as well.
No, it's I have brothers. They're a little bigger, heavier, or lighter, smaller, a little lighter weight. They could have done cousins. They could have done the same thing, but only one had to walk in there and do it. So if we put a bigger brother, it wouldn't be as impressive. That's what my father thought. And if you put a smaller brother or cousin, he could have done the same thing, but it might have taken a little longer.
So you were handpicked by your father in some ways, were you?
Oh, yes. Plus,
it was his decision.
It was his decision.
He's also a deadly assassin, you know that. I mean, that is the point.
I do not doubt
you know that. I mean, there's no... Look at him. I mean, he's had 40... It's extraordinary, man. What I love about what's happened with Royce and what's happened with the Gracies is that jiu-jitsu has become a way of life for so many people, which is, you know, it's almost like a gospel now, isn't it?
It's, yeah, with the way we eat. You see, we call it the Gracie diet. It's not exactly a diet, it's more of eating habits. The way we carry ourselves. It's a martial art for us. It's not just a fighting art. It's a self-defense art.
There was one video I stumbled upon on YouTube a while back, and bizarrely, it's Chuck Norris, and he says he was in Rio de Janeiro, and he says he was on vacation, but he was still working out, so that's obviously a vacation for some people. So he's there, he's in amongst the gyms in Rio, and he's told about the Gracie gyms. He's told by everybody, you need to go to the Gracie gyms. And he goes and he meets your father. Do you want to tell the story here? Is this a true story when Chuck Norris meets your father?
Yes.
Do you want to tell the story?
Well, I was there. It was him and Bob Wall that came over to the gym. And let's just say they took a nice class.
Okay. Basically, Chuck Norris, he gets your father into a hold, and your father says to him, go on, punch me. And Chuck Norris is like, there's no way I'm punching this old man. And he, just as he's about to pull back his fist, that's the last thing he remembers, and then he wakes up and...
That was a nice class.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's got a lot of respect for your father, because in the video, he keeps referring to him as Mr. Gracie, rather than actually using his first name. Like, what sort of figure is he? Like, was he like completely revered around Rio even before Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu took the world by storm?
Chuck Norris actually started training after that visit and earned his black belt.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That tells you all you really need to know.
He's been training Jiu-Jitsu for a long time.
How has the sport developed in Brazil? Has it been a product of the global takeover of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or was it already raging at that point when you go back to the early 90s?
That's the thing. What happens in Brazil stays in Brazil. So until my brother brought and create the fighting show in America, the UFC, and start with all that, that's when it spanned to all over the world. That's when people are like, okay, we got to learn this, including Geraldo Gordô. After I beat him, he went back to Holland, and I saw him after years later, and he said, man, we came back and we prepare a fighter, Remco Pardue, to beat you. We prepare him. He's a judo player. We prepare him. The second UFC, and then he lost to me. Bigger, 250, 260 pounds. Wow. And I beat him. That's when they went back and it's like, okay, we got to learn this. Instead, prepare to go against them. We got to learn what he have.
Absolutely. Was he any good?
Oh, they're all good.
Yeah.
There's no such a thing as a good student or bad student. There's good teachers and bad teachers.
Right, okay. Fair way of describing it.
With that in mind, and the fact that you were fighting guys in some ways almost twice your weight, and there was no time limit, how do you compare the sport you inhabited in those early days to the UFC and MMA as we look at it now, where everybody's matched up against a guy who's thereabouts the same weight, and you know that it's not necessarily that you're going to have to tap out at some stage because the bell will ultimately save you possibly over the course of the 4 or 5 rounds. When you compare the two, is it far better or worse, or is it just the way that things evolve and develop with the development of time?
It's different. On the beginning, it was a style against a style. Today, it's more of a fighter against a fighter. They both learn the same thing. They both know the same stand-up martial art. They both knows the same grappling. Everybody's studying Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Everybody's doing boxing, kickboxing. So it's more of an athlete against an athlete. Who does their homework better? Who have the better strategy? You see, so sometimes the fight looks easy, but it is not easy. It's because it took 30 seconds. Like this Friday, tomorrow we have the fight over here. Hey, the fights might go fast. It's because I made you step that way. When you step that way, I caught you with a kick, with a punch, or I took you down, and sometimes they cannot take each other out of the game. So the fight will go the whole 3 rounds or 5 rounds. So because they are not able to make the opponent make a mistake.
Do you yearn for the days where you had a particular fighter that was an expert in one form of mixed martial arts, where nowadays you need to kind of be a jack of all trades, because if you go in relying on one aspect of it, you're probably going to have that ultimately used as a weakness against you and be taken out?
I wouldn't say jack of all trades because I'm against that, but everyone have a home. So a boxer, he will learn the grappling game. But his home is standing up. So if he can, he'll bring the fight to his feet. A kickboxer will bring the fight to Lyoto Machida, for instance. Every time he'll bring the fight standing up because that's his home. Doesn't mean that he's a bad grappler. He knows how to grapple. They learn the rest as a AJ McKee. You see, he's a very good standing up, knocks everybody out. Very good grappler. So they learn to complement their style.
Have you, over the years, become more adept at striking as well, or have you always just stayed with jiu-jitsu? Has your mixed martial arts game become rounder and rounder? I learn everything for me to know what they're going to do to me. I'm not going to learn boxing so I can box against my opponent who's a boxer, been boxing all his year. Never play another man's game. So he's a boxer. I'm going to learn boxing so I can see when he steps, when he moves, what's coming at me. Not because I'm going to try to outbox a boxer.
You've obviously spoken to John Kavanagh in the past. His home is obviously Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm not sure if you read his book, but you get mentioned, I think, on 5 different occasions in the book. And you will obviously know this, but for anybody at home who isn't aware of this extract in the book, I may as well just read out a bit of this page. It's before they go to Vegas. McGregor's made it at this point. This isn't any small money. This is John Kavanagh at the height. So they're about to go off, and Orla walks in and hands John the phone and says, "This phone call is for you." And he says, "I'm really busy at the moment. We're about to get on a flight to Vegas. Who is it?" And he says, she says, "I think you want to take this call. It's Royce Gracie." When she hands me the phone, I can't believe it was actually Royce on the other end of the line. I was speechless for a moment before I could actually utter a greeting. "John, hello." This is what you say. "My name is Royce Gracie. I'm from the Gracie family." And Kavanagh says to you, "I know exactly who you are, Mr. Gracie. You don't need to introduce yourself to me." And then before he hangs up the phone to you, like, you wish him luck and all that. And you have a private student going to Dublin, which is a real honour for him at that point. And he says, "I can't allow you to hang up without telling you that you've basically given me this life. I saw you when I was a terrified 19-year-old kid who didn't know where he was going or what he wanted to do. But when I saw what you were able to do, it changed my life. I really can't thank you enough. You've given me an amazing life. None of us would be doing what we're doing now without you stepping into that octagon." And that really comes back to the earlier point we made, why you were the Gracie selected, because you beat guys who were much bigger than you. You gave hope to kids like John Kavanagh who were bullied in school that they could go out and fight at that level.
That's the idea that my father had, my father and my brother Horion. It's like I'm more of an average sized person, still until today, 178, 180 pounds, same weight as the first UFC. So yeah, it's to people associate themselves more with myself.
How much respect do you have for...
But John Kavanagh, I mean, like a lot of people, I did not change them. They think I changed them. They changed themselves. I just showed the way.
Well, some people need inspiration, and that's what you provided.
I just showed, hey, it's possible. You can do it. So, but they're the ones that got up and did it. So, yeah, they say I did it. Nah, I think I tell them all the time, no, you did it. I didn't make you get up off the couch. You're the one who got up the couch and went after your dream, man, after you saw me.
You're inspiring me right now, just listening to the studio. Royce, can I ask you, we often put this question to former professional footballers who might have played in the 70s and 80s, and while they loved their time, they didn't enjoy the riches and the incredible wealth and the wages that modern day footballers are being paid. And clearly the UFC has moved on to such an extent that you've got guys like Conor McGregor, albeit not quite the 100 million that he's making in a fight against McGregor, but, you know, $3, $5, $6 million per fight. That's a world away from the sort of purses you are fighting for. Do you wish you had your time again, and that maybe you were able to fight in this era so that you could make yourself financially secure as opposed to sort of the difficulties you had to go through?
I am financially secure.
Okay. Well, that's great.
But no, I did not.
You wouldn't swap it for anything?
I would not, because then I wouldn't be the history. Right now, I am the history.
And the reason you're
people are trying to make the history. I am the history.
And so there's no envy or jealousy of what you see guys achieving nowadays?
I would have do it all over again, exactly the same. Wouldn't change a thing.
What would you change about the way the UFC and MMA fights in general are fought nowadays? I mean, if there was one aspect of the setup that you enjoyed and that you participated in when you were starting out that you could reintroduce to modern day MMA, what would it be?
I wouldn't change it. It was the evolution of the progress of the whole thing. On the beginning, like I said, there was no time limit, but there was no weight division. So I'll give you weight division, I'll give you the weight advantage, but you got to give me time. It will be unfair. You see, if I fight somebody 200 pounds heavier than me and with a time limit, come on. I'll give you the advantage of the weight, but you give me time. So, but today everybody's on the same weight, so the rules are even for everybody. They're both on the same weight. You see, it's pretty even. People say a lot of times, well, it favors the stand-up guys. No, it doesn't. It favors the grapplers. No, it doesn't. You see, it's pretty even.
As an MMA aficionado and one of the founding fathers of the sport as we know it, what did you make of the McGregor-Mayweather fight, something that was dubbed as a bit of a circus and a bit of a farce by a lot of people, boxing lovers actually in particular, but overall, what were your thoughts on it?
It showed that if it was an MMA fight, McGregor would have eaten him alive. But boxing, Mayweather give it to him the first 3 rounds, didn't throw a punch. Show it to everybody that, hey, it's a different game. Like I say all the time, never play another man's game. So that was boxing, that was Mayweather's game.
If Conor McGregor was one of the contestants in UFC 1, would he have taken your crown from you?
There's only one way to find out. Go fight the guy that I fight.
Are you calling Conor McGregor out right now?
No, I'm not calling him out. It's not a... you don't judge the person, the fighter, by fighting one against the other. You look where he fought and look at this person fought. You see, I fought guys. I got a guy that was 6'8", 490 pounds. Well, but he's fat and slow. Walk up to a 6'8", 490 pounds, slap him on the face. You see how fat and slow he is. Can you imagine how massive a man that is?
Yeah.
And go ahead and slap him. So that's how you judge the fighters instead of putting one against the other.
Sure.
Hey, I could have made a mistake. He could have made a mistake. Everybody makes a mistake. And get hit, nobody's punch-proof. But you see their career, who they fought, and you see, that's how you judge.
That's amazing in MMA, though, because, you know, you do get A beats B, B beats C, C beats A, you know, because the styles, it's all about the stylistic matchup. That is what's fascinating about it, in my view, you know, because you mentioned earlier that how don't play another man's game, you mentioned it a couple of times. We do see that with today with developing fighters. Like a wrestler will suddenly think that they're a boxer, or even Demian Maia, who's a brilliant Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner, suddenly, he's a southpaw, and he suddenly wanted to box for a few fights, and he was getting his mojo kind of boxing, and then he returned eventually to his natural game. You know, I suppose
didn't go very well boxing.
It didn't,
for him.
exactly, you know. That's fascinating about MMA as well. For me, I mean, having been around combat sports a long time, to kind of put a meta view on this, and having been around Royce a little bit, there's an aura. I've got to say this. There's an aura. You don't like this because you are so modest. There is an aura around Royce. Like there's an aura around this Gracie family, and I've met many of them, his brothers and his cousins, and I've never met the father. I never did meet the father, but they are a special group of people. There's no question about it. And now their children and their grandchildren are going to follow the art, and I think it's a blessing bestowed on the fight world, because it's the gentle art. It's not. You know, as I was saying, he's about seeing where his opponent's going to come at him, because all he wants to do is pacify them, basically. And that's what I love about it, you know, and I love about you.
I was being facetious, obviously, when I was asking about McGregor there, but just your analysis of his jiu-jitsu, do you think he's one of the top Brazilian jiu-jitsu artists around?
He haven't showed the jiu-jitsu yet. He's been showing a lot of the stand-up part. We're still yet to find his jiu-jitsu, but he is good. He's trained by one of the best coaches in the MMA game right now.
That's what I was about to ask you. You've obviously well familiar with the SPG operation over here. Like, how highly do you rate John Kavanagh as a trainer?
He's very good. Hey, look what he did with McGregor. So we'll see his Brian fighting this weekend, tomorrow. So we'll see what happens.
Royce, before we let you go, are you very positive about the future of UFC, Bellator, OTBAM, MMA in general? Are you in a good place when you look into the future, and do you think the sport's going in the right direction, that it will continue to develop and evolve, take on boxing, take on all other fight games, and make it the ability to go from one level to the next in the next 5 or 10 years?
I wouldn't say take on against boxing. They're different sports. You see, boxing will always be there. Like wrestling, collision wrestling in America, you can't take on that, you see. I look at different ways. It's a different sport. It's a healthy competition among the shows, among the events, among the sports. So you can put an MMA fight, Bellator, in one night, and you can put the UFC the next day, and it happens. And you can put the boxing on the same weekend, the same, you see. So they all go different sports, different fans. It's not one time to smash the other. I don't look at it that way.
Royce Gracie, UFC Hall of Famer there with Dave McIntyre and I, and Gareth A. Davies was the other person in studio, but you know who Gareth A. is at this point. There is a great backstage video as well of Royce Gracie's antics. Joseph Conroy put that together, and that will be available on our social media channels over the next couple of days. There's a very special aspect of that, which I'm not going to reveal just yet, but let's just say Royce Gracie worked a couple of his moves on Dave McIntyre and myself, and made us tap out basically, and even our producer Tommy out there got put under the spell of the legend that is Royce Gracie. So you can catch up on that on Facebook and Twitter over the next couple of days. This evening on Off the Ball, it's myself in the hot seat as well. We've got Thursday Night Football with John Giles. The man never stops working, John Giles, even during Christmas. We're going to be chatting about all the Premier League action that's coming up this weekend, and indeed the last couple of days of action. We're also going to have Don McLean on after another great day of action at Leopardstown, and indeed we're going to be crossing over to the United States because the NFL season reaches the end of the regular season this weekend. So loads to talk about tonight on Off the Ball. We're live on News Talk from 7 o'clock. Until then, good morning.